I think what a lot of people in procurement forget about is companies don't have to do business with you. Salespeople don't have to sell to you, because if you say no, they'll just go on to the next person, right? So yeah, I think collaboration with sales, I think, really needs to be at the forefront of everything. And it goes back to that point that I made about it's not just reducing costs and managing cost, it's creating value through ESG, it's creating value through risk control, supply diversification, all those things that are in the heads of procurement people.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Luke Tomlinson. Luke is category manager at MS3. So today is going to be all about procurement. So Luke, first up, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And well, you have some opinions on procurement, which might surprise some people. I think it might rattle the cages of some of your procurement professionals, which will be fun. We like that sort of episode. But when we were chatting just before, and why I've asked you to come on and have a chat to us, is that you believe that procurement needs to be way more collaborative, which is a word that I kind of went, oh, hello. So no, tell me what you mean by that.
So I think traditionally procurement has been very much a back office function. It's been very transactional, and in all honesty, it's probably an afterthought for a lot of people internally. And I think from my time in the function, I've sort of discovered it has got a lot of potential. And it touches so many areas of the business. It touches ESG, it touches risk management, it touches obviously the basic core principle of it, cost control, and creating value for the organisation. I think the only way to really do that as effectively as we can is by collaborating with stakeholders, and that involves salespeople. I think a lot of the time there are quite a lot of instances that I've known where sort of procurement feel like they hold all the cards. And, at the end of the day, I think what a lot of people in procurement forget about is companies don't have to do business with you. Salespeople don't have to sell to you, because if you say no, they'll just go on to the next person, right? So, yeah, I think collaboration with sales, I think, really needs to be at the forefront of everything. And it goes back to that point that I made about it's not just reducing costs and managing cost, it's creating value through ESG, it's creating value through risk control, supply diversification, all those things that are in the heads of procurement people, and that we think about all the time. I think we do often think that it's not just us who creates that value. You need to work with partners, including sales partners, to create that value, essentially.
Wow, you just dropped a couple of lines here which we need to go back and look at in a little bit more detail. So first thing you said is you need to collaborate with stakeholders, and that includes salespeople.
Yeah.
So let me to try to interpret this a little bit. A lot of procurement people might be going, well, my stakeholders are all internal. And you're thinking, hang on, no, you're missing the point here. We need these guys external as well to get us to where we want to.
Yeah.
Have I interpreted that right? I just checked
No,
that I didn't have my happy ears on.
No, do you know? No, you've interpreted it 100% correctly. I think when you look at like I don't know, marketing, for example, consultants and agencies, they're still stakeholders for them. I think procurement as a whole, it isn't just about internal stakeholders. At the end of the day, as procurement, you are delivering value for stakeholders and the internal stakeholders and the business, but you can't generate that value unless you've got the external stakeholders involved. So, okay, so the salespeople and people who you're buying off of. Essentially, at the end of the day, I think it's just as probably another sort of slightly controversial opinion for some would be, for salespeople, procurement people should be stakeholders. The stakeholder is whoever is in the end to end of that business chain, because it's not just generating value for us by working with salespeople. You're generating value for the salesperson. You're generating revenue for them, and they're generating value for you. But you only do that if you sort of come together in that sort of unity and understand each other in that sense. It's about the salesperson understanding what's really important to the procurement person, but it's also that nuance of the procurement person has to understand what the salesperson's getting out of it. Because at the end of the day, there's no point selling to you if they're not going to get any value themselves.
Yeah, which is where you said that companies don't have to do business with you.
Yeah, exactly.
And going back to what you're talking about value creation, there is that you need somebody to work with you to create the value.
Yeah.
If you didn't, well, then you wouldn't be speaking to anybody, full stop. Procurement wouldn't exist, and the company would be quite happily doing what they're doing. But
Yeah.
to really get where they want to do, get where they want to be, we need to collaborate, co-create, build stuff together. And so that person is a partner. That person is somebody who is going to be working with you in some way, shape, or form. Now,
Yeah.
it might be just selling you bits that you're going to bolt on and use and whatever, or they are very much integrated in a whole piece in how you're developing value.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that when you say co-create, that's probably one of the best ways of describing it. I think it's that sort of co-creation of that value. Yeah, I really like that co-create.
I mean, if not, and if there's no potential to do that, we don't need to be speaking, full stop. And
Yeah.
then this is where some salespeople miss the point in that, oh, I should go and sell to this company. Well, actually, do you know what value it means to them, what they are trying to achieve, how they're trying to achieve it, and where you would fit in with that? Because if you don't, there's literally no proposition. So
Yeah.
we talk about value propositions, understand value. Okay, well, this is how I propose to help you get there. It's not rocket science. Now, there's elegance in how you put the thing together, but the better we can do that, well, the better we're all, like you say, we're all going to come out of this mutual benefit, win-win, happy days.
Yeah.
So, well, why do we need to involve procurement in that then? Because this is something that some salespeople and some sales trainers still say, oh, you have to avoid them, work around them, sneak past them. Why do we need you, Luke?
No, do you know what? That is a very, very good point. I suppose there's two sort of sides to this sword. And this is probably the age-old one. Everybody thinks they know how to buy. Everybody thinks they know how to buy. They think it's just getting a PL across. There you go, boy. No, it's not. It's not just that. That's purchasing. There's a different conversation, but there's a whole different ballpark. The difference between procurement versus purchasing. So yeah, there's that side of it that everybody thinks they know how to buy, but not everyone knows certain risks and nuances that have got to be considered. I don't think, and it's no slight on anybody else who's buying stuff that isn't in procurement, but they don't do it for a living. They don't know all the nuances. And I suppose when you're looking at, I don't know, like on the other side of it is you could have another stakeholder. I don't know, say a salesperson or marketing person on the buying side. If procurement wasn't in that equation, they went off, looked at propositions and stuff like that from salespeople. Being a salesperson, if you're selling to the right person, like for example, if you're selling a marketing product to someone who's in marketing, then they're probably going to be a lot more, not engaged, I think that's the wrong word, but I think it'd probably be easier to sell to them, I would have imagined, because it goes back to the point not everyone knows how to buy. And I'm not saying marketing people or anyone else doesn't know how to buy. So they don't know how to buy as well as procurement, and that's a fact because they don't do it for a job. There's consideration like contractual considerations, for example. There's ESG and supply chain considerations. There's the risk considerations. There's the supply diversification considerations. That if you're selling like a software system, someone in IT, they're just going to look at that software system and go, oh yeah, great sound. Do you know what I mean? And deal done. They're not going to look at that whole other picture that protects the business. And I think that's probably one of the best ways I think I can explain why you need procurement, because not everyone knows how to buy. That's the purchasing side. So you could argue that's purchasing, but the procurement piece is everything else out, the cost plus everything else that protects the business and maximizes the value. And I imagine, I imagine procurement people are probably the last people that salespeople want to sell to, because it's probably we're sticklers, but we're sticklers for a reason. But I think that's why it's to protect the business.
And we probably don't know how to. We don't know what's important to you. If
Yeah,
we're selling software and we're talking to IT, we've probably got an IT background and we know what they're trying to achieve. We can talk to them and it's easy peasy. If we're selling engineering solutions, we can go and talk to other engineers and we can work out what they're trying to do and how we're going to bolt stuff together, and bingo, yeah, solved. There's a different conversation. That list you gave, risk, contracts, ESG, supply diversification, they aren't things that salespeople are particularly trained in. They don't understand why that would be important. So I like to think, because I'm glass half full, it's not about avoiding them because it's a pain. It's because we don't really realize how important that stuff is.
yeah.
And so it's sort of like, well, let's carry on doing all the things we're comfortable with. Oh, and then we've got to bloody well procurement in at the end. And they slow everything down. They put their aura in and it messes up all the stuff we've been doing. Because again, if I'm interpreting what you're saying, it's get us involved earlier
Yeah.
and we can make the job easier for you. Is that fair? Have I kind of
That's
recognised that?
that's very fair, and I'd even go to the lengths of, so for example, quite a lot of projects I've worked on recently, instead of, there's been some instances, but instead of actually letting the internal stakeholders go out to suppliers, procurement as a function, we've gathered the information needed from stakeholders and we've gone out to suppliers and included them. So I think, to be honest, it depends what you're selling, right? And I suppose, but I think it's all about, like you say, involving procurement early, preferably in the pre-procurement phase and not halfway through, or even a third of the way through. Because at the end of the day, then we're just playing catch up. We're trying to figure out and we could miss stuff. We could miss stuff if we're not involved, if we're not the key person involved. We're going to miss stuff. And that means it's going to take longer because we're going to have to circle back. We're going to have to find the information that's keeping us involved early. And I think that sort of enhances that sort of collaborative approach, because you're showing that, as you say, not everyone's trained in, supply diversification and all the ESG considerations and all that good stuff. But I don't think you need to know the ins and outs of that. You just need to know, like what you say, what's important to that. Not just procurement, because what's important to procurement is basically what's important to the business.
Yeah, I mean, the more and more I think about this, the more salespeople have got to understand what a buying journey looks like. We get obsessed with sales processes where I want to do something to you, which doesn't really work like that. But when we can step back and go, hang on a minute, what does a buying journey look like? Someone's going to realize that, oh, hang on a minute, we've got an issue here. We need to do something about it. What are we going to do about it? How can we fix that problem? So what does that solution look like? Who can we then involve? Now let's get some options on it, RFP. And then now a lot of salespeople get excited when RFP comes out. It's like, oh yes, they really like me. They want to buy from me. And we'll come back on to that one in a bit. What I would be training or do train salespeople to do is like get in early. So it's help people realize that there is something they should be paying attention to. And
Yeah.
that may be at quite a senior level because it's the external drivers that are impacting them, to then kickstart this. Oh, that means we need to start to work out how to do stuff around this. which is
Yeah.
where the senior people might introduce you to the functional level marketing, the IT, the engineer, whoever it is. So if we're going like that, we'd probably approach senior, but then we'd be saying early on, okay, this is an engineering issue. Shall we get procurement involved in this at this stage?
Yeah.
Which the engineers go, oh no, don't get them involved. Well, I
Yeah,
don't want to
exactly.
either, but I think we should. Is that what we're saying? That we should be going early doors, right? Yes, let's progress this stuff together, but let's give them sight of what we're up to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's from a procurement perspective, it's there's two sides to it. There's like you say, it's making sure salespeople engage us as early as possible, so that it makes it smoother, it makes it easier to, makes the process easier and a lot more flows a lot more. And we're not circling back around for fine details because if we're involved early, then we're going to know those details. I suppose the other side for people in procurement, it's changing the perception of the function. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people expect it to just, I think everybody should, be garnered respect. But I think a lot of people in procurement are like, no one respects the function. No one does this. No, change the perception then. Like, do you know what I mean? It sounds easier than it's said, but it's like, well, it's been done. It's been done. So it's a matter of not just moaning about it. This is probably going to divide a lot of people, but it's and I fully appreciate it's quite difficult, firsthand. But if you build the relationships and you build that collaborative approach, it does work because then people, a lot of the time I go, it's my job to be right, not to be liked. But equally, it's nice to
I
be
like that,
liked.
mate.
It is though, isn't it? It's my job to be right, not to be liked. I think that's sometimes the problem with procurement because you need to be right. You need to be that voice of reason, that is sometimes really bloody annoying. Um, where that moment like earlier, like, oh god, it's them. But it's like I'm just doing the job, mate. Um, but yeah, it's that, but changing that perception. So, and I think in changing that perception internally, it does translate externally. Because I don't know about you, but I imagine there's probably a lot of salespeople who've you can if you're having a meeting with several stakeholders in a business trying to sell something, I imagine you can probably tell the perception of procurement in that organization just by sitting on that meeting, because you'll see the engagement level and you'll see the attitude. And
What
I
I mean,
think,
like no one's looking at them.
yeah, exactly. It's like,
Not
yeah,
shared any
forgets to
meeting
introduce
minutes or
them.
anything with you before. They don't even get a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, gets to sit on the floor in the corner.
No
Um,
chair.
no chair, yeah, not even the chair. Stall if you're lucky. But yeah, no, I think it is. Yeah, I think it does translate externally because perceptions do you can see through perceptions, I think.
I look. I'm gonna write a personal branding for procurement course. Change the perception of you.
Strange, yeah,
Um, but to a degree, it is. It's the sort of sell yourselves. Maybe
yeah,
say, look, guys, you're bloody good at buying. That's your job, but you actually do need to sell yourselves a little bit.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Um,
100%, hundred
look at what the
percent.
salespeople are doing. Now, not everything they do because there's sort of shoddy behaviors around, but actually look at the ones that you probably invited in. Why do you invite them in? What do they do that makes them so attractive to you? Why you like working with them? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's positioning yourself externally and it's selling yourself internally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I, the other thing I've picked up, I'm scribbling a lot down here, which is that I need to be right, not liked. And I'm thinking how salespeople can respond to that. Oh, I best gird my loins for an argument here, or call it out. Say, hey, look, I know in your position, your job is to be right, not liked. Yeah.
yeah,
But, and I can help you with this because I'll challenge some of the things that you're thinking to make sure you're right.
yeah.
How about that? Yeah, let's
That's
just
really,
make
yeah.
sure your correctness is bang on. That's my job. I want you to be right, but it might need a bit of a push every now and again around some of the things that you might be thinking. What do you reckon? Yep, I want to be right, not liked. So yeah, happy days. Good, because I don't need to be liked either. As long as we're both right, we'll both win. Cool. Well, actually, probably gonna end up liking each other after all that.
It's yeah. No, do you know what? It is difficult, especially personally. I find it really difficult to write and not liked because I am somewhat of a people person, which shocker. Some procurement people are people. Um,
Another podcast guest told me that.
another, but
I
yeah,
didn't believe them either.
we are a rarity. We're a rare breed. But yeah, it is very difficult for me personally because you need to be right, and I think it does help internally and externally, to be fair, if you liked. Obviously, no salesperson wants to deal with a knob at the end of the day. And same internally.
So, well, same vice versa, is it?
Yeah,
No procurement
exactly.
person wants to do well, not, So yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's probably I've probably put that a bit
No, no,
basically, but
no, but look, the point is that we get the message across, and sometimes
yeah,
the basic message is far easier than us wrapping it up in so many different kind of weasel words that it doesn't make any sense to people.
yeah,
Um, but then that's if you are a people person, you can use people skills, and you've got that awareness, the EQ, the emotional intelligence, to say, okay, yeah, what I'm doing here is tough. It's tough for me. It's tough for them, but it is the right thing to do at this time.
yeah,
Yeah, a guy called Mark Shankius, I interviewed a little bit ago, and he wrote a book which I can't remember the bloody title of. Sorry, Mark, but he talks about different coloured chairs
right,
that the customer sits in, or that the procurement people sit in. And he says, depending on a matrix, it's either a blue chair or a red chair. And the blue chair is cold, and the procurement will be cold. They will be cold because that's the behavior that serves them. They don't need to get close. They don't need a relationship. They don't want to. And it would actually just be unproductive to do that. So they put the supplier in the blue chair and they sit themselves in the blue chair, cold, cold, cold. But at a certain point, it's actually we want the relationship. It makes sense strategically. It makes sense from the value we're creating. Your chair is very warm. I will be warm to you as well. And that's where we're going to be on this thing together, co-creating, collaborating, and doing all the sort of partner thinking stuff to get the best results for all of us. In
yeah,
some occasions, look, mate, you're in blue chair, and I'm sitting in blue chair, even though actually it's quite cold for me too. I
yeah.
love the way you put that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's, and I like the word the use of the word partner as well. I think let's not be coy. At the end of the day, you're always going to have tiers of suppliers. You're always going to have your transactional suppliers, but often I find that a lot of the transactional suppliers know that they're transactional suppliers, and they won't push you. They'll just it'll tick along. However, I think when you're looking at things on a more strategic level, that partnership really comes in, and it's something I use quite a lot. We need, like if I'm looking at something on a strategic level, we don't just need a relationship. We don't just need something transactional. We need a partnership. I think that's a collaborative partnership. So that, we're both in this together. If the ship sinks, we're both we're both going down in it. We've both got
Yeah.
something to lose. However, that if you're collaborative, it really, really enhances the relationship, I think.
This is something I understood that does annoy procurement people, is that when suppliers don't really understand where they sit in the world. And so I might be selling
Yeah,
to you and it might be worth £1 million worth of business. Yeah, my
yeah,
target's 1.5 million. I mean, that is pretty important to me. You're
yeah,
strategically important to me. That £1 million to you in your 10 billion turnover and that your personal spend of 1 billion isn't a massive deal. So when I talk to you about being strategically important, you're like, no, mate, you're not. Is
yeah.
it tail? You call it tail spend? Is that the
Tail
right?
end,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're not. Stop saying that. In fact, by saying it, you're looking a bit naive, and I'm now worried about the fact that you get us and our business. So the best advice, I don't know if you can verify this, is that if that's work out where you are. If that's where you are, head down. Well, not head down, but make it very, very easy for people to deal with you. Don't make mistakes. Make it so it's so seamless they're never ever going to look at you, and enjoy the revenue. Don't be trying to push for strategic meetings because you're not.
yeah.
Is that decent advice if you're at that
No,
point?
that's decent advice. I'd say I do agree with the fact that making it easier. for people in procurement, making life easier. But I think there are some of us like I will do a bit of extra work if it means I get something a bit extra out of it. So I think there's a balance of making it easy to deal
Yeah.
with the person. I think a lot about I'd say about 90% of that comes from relationship with an individual. And I think probably a separate subject, but when you have like changing account manager or something like that, it's almost back to not back to square one, but it does the dynamic does change because you're not dealing with the same person. So I think sometimes it isn't just that, like people buy from people. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
not buying from the company. They're buying from they're buying from, I don't know, like Bob. And then if Steve comes in, you're not buying from Bob anymore. Probably a different conversation, but
Well,
it's
and it's not because Bob's a good old boy that brings in biscuits and can tell great jokes and supports the same football team,
no, it's not.
which helps, but
Oh,
it's
it
that
does help. Yeah.
Bob has understood you, your world, what you're trying to achieve, how you do it, who's
Yeah.
important, the things that you don't like, things you do like, and will position stuff fast for you that gets you where you want to be. That's what
Yeah.
Bob brings to the party.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve's
And
got to work all that out.
yes, yeah, and for all we know, Steve could be a knob. We don't know
Yeah.
until you build
Yeah.
that relationship. So it's not gone. It's just sort of it doesn't. It shifts the dynamic a bit until you build that relationship up. And sometimes, I've been instances where like 2 or 3 meetings later, I'm getting on with them and working with them just as well as I did Bob. But yeah, it's sound advice that, but I think it's also understanding, and it's one that I relay quite a lot. Like when I go over all the different external and internal factors and dynamics that we need, the risk and the supply chain element. I always come back to the point saying, these are really important to us. However, and I always use this same term because I don't like going. I'd very rarely go, it needs to be lower cost. I go, it needs to be commercially viable.
Mm.
But that does also play into, like anything from rebates, commercial viability, gets it open ended. Could be better payment terms, even moving from date of invoice to end of month. That's still a benefit for procurement because we can calculate that and plan the POs so that we're getting another month out of it. I'm probably giving all the secrets here, but there's different things you consider and different avenues you can explore to create value. Is what I'm saying.
Well, but isn't that the point that we want an element of transparency?
Yeah,
Now, not just saying completely at my cost, though. If I'm saying, look, it makes a point to me, it's not commercially viable for you to sell that because I make a loss.
yeah,
But when you talk about cost, you immediately will drive the supplier down a pricing way of thinking.
yeah,
Yeah. When you say commercially viable, I'm just scribbling it down on my pad here, and it's interesting how close viable is to variable.
mm,
You're
yeah,
making me think of other variables. Now, cost is one of them, but I could also be talking about the warranties. It could be that training. It could be like, yes, it could be rebate to do with cost. It could be to do with support.
yeah,
Okay, what does support actually mean? It could be to do with a whole bunch of other elements, which you say, fine, that stuff that you've just put into table or put on the table, that's valuable to us. That
yeah,
makes it commercially viable at a higher price
yeah.
because we're getting stuff for that. We've had to go out and buy that ourselves anyway, or we want to done it and we want to use stuff as well. So
That comes down to that total cost of ownership as well. That's thought. I think yeah. That's basically TCO. All these other elements, and I think one thing I'll see if you agree if it's fair. One thing I have noticed, and it's very specific, but if you ask a supplier, like in an introductory meeting or something, well, what else do you add? What do you add that's different from X, Y, and Z? 'Cause I think probably a different subject, but I've noticed that some people do struggle to distinguish why they're different from the next four people.
yeah,
Um, and I'll go, oh well, we're value add, we add value. And I often find, and you've just described what they could be there, the warranty training, etc., etc. I've noticed a lot of people struggle to answer it, and then you're left like, well, it makes as someone in procurement, sometimes you think you don't really know, do you? Or you're not. But I don't think it's because they don't know. I think sometimes they don't know how to project that and how to put that across, if that makes sense.
no, they don't know.
And I think that's one of the
If
issues.
they know, they'll know how to explain it
Yeah,
because there's various stages of answer to this. It's like, I ain't got a clue, mate. Okay,
yeah,
that's not very helpful. We might
yeah,
not be doing so much work with you. It's, oh, this is where we are different.
Yeah.
And you go, no, I didn't ask that question because they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether you're based in Nottingham, Leeds, New York, or bloody Johannesburg doesn't make any difference to us whatsoever
Yeah.
because it's a virtual product. Yeah.
Yeah.
The differentiator is the thing which is relevant to you because of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So a good salesperson should have understood this
Yeah.
if they're into that conversation or have a way of saying, damn good question, Luke. That's what I want to know. And so for me to answer it properly, I want to understand this, this, and this. I'm involving you early. Can you introduce me to this person where I can understand what they're trying to achieve and this person they're trying to achieve? I can then say how we can help them, and that is why we will be different or differentiated or relevant to you.
Yeah. And that's
And
the
then that's the bit
collaborative.
where they can't answer because they don't know
Yeah.
how to. And that's the collaborative piece. It's that ideally I would know because I've done a bit of research or I've had a guess. Yeah. Or I think it's this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on what information I've got so far, and we've not really got involved, but my kind of working hypothesis is this. You go, fair play. Good guess. Look, there's some things you would never know about us until we tell you, but yeah, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Oh, time is flying. Right. There is one thing I like to ask procurement people. So we'll
Go
wrap
ahead.
up on this one, which is the whole thing about RFPs.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said it earlier, didn't I? I alluded we'd come to this where salespeople go, "Oh, I've got an RFP. Been invited." Invited. The language you guys use. Like fair, by the way. Just wanted to pick up on. But we're invited to get involved with this. Yeah. Got to be in it to win it. We've got a chance here. They're going to invite 3 people. I've got a 33% chance winning or whatever it is. Really? And I know it's how long's a piece of string, but if it's just responding to an RFP, someone's not been involved to this stage, what chances have they actually got of winning that business?
Um, that's a very good question. I'm going to try and give an answer that's not a politician's answer.
No, I want a percent, mate. I want a percent.
A percent.
I'm
Okay.
going to hold
Percent.
you to.
I would say, from my perspective, I'd say the percentage that they might have of winning is probably 40%.
40.
I'd say it depends. This is the thing. It
Ah.
depends what it is. I think
Mm,
the only, if not, I'd say 40 purely on the basis. Depends what you're selling. If it's a high
mm,
value product, I'd say it'd be 50. I'd say it could be anyone. I think when you're looking at something of high value, um, not single transaction, but low volume, high value is probably the best way to describe it. You sort of in procurement, you sort of go, all right, I need to focus on this a bit more. I need to be, me personally, I'm always impartial. And a lot of people say that, but I'm genuinely impartial. I'm sure if people spoke to my suppliers, I hope they'd say I'm impartial. But something like that, it's like, right, okay, right now, boys, we've got to focus on this now. We've got to properly, we've got
mm.
end to end RFP, shit's going down. And I think if it's lower value, higher volume, or it's not quite on that partnership level, if it's transactional, if it's tail end, and I think it goes back to the point of you saying making it easier. If you're
Yeah.
working with a supplier that's making it easier, you would, I think it's a lower chance of probably being awarded because it's a lot more hassle than it's worth. And I think that sometimes you don't want to say that to suppliers or people trying to sell you something, but sometimes it is, mate, it's a lot more hassle than it's worth moving it. The other supplier makes it easier. We're a decent, it's commercially okay, it works for us. But then again, from my perspective, another one that might divide procurement people, if you're looking at doing an RFP for tail end and lower end value items where a new supplier on the block is going to have a lower chance of winning, why the hell are you doing an RFP? Like it's RFQ. You tail end, you group together. You're not
Yeah.
you're not gonna if you're gonna get like, I don't know, 10 quid return on it, it's not worth it. So I'd say 40% probably for lower tail end. It's going to be really difficult, I think, from a
Yeah.
procurement perspective, to justify the work that you put into it. Sometimes the work you put into it, you don't really see much of a return on it for the business. Higher value, I'd say it's pretty equal. Depends on the person.
But then you've said this is end to end. So this is you involved
Yes.
earlier and
Yeah.
you're looking for the person. So going back to that buying cycle I was talking about, oh, something's happened. We need to do something about this. We want to work with someone who's going to sit alongside us to help us really understand what that problem is, to then kind of work out what that solution looks like, to then get into specifying what that thing is. You're talking about that being part of the RFP, as
Yeah.
opposed to we've done all this business, we know what we're trying to do here. Can you give us a price for this?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so
Exactly
if
that.
you're involved, so the question to ask is, where are these people at? Are they, we want you to collaborate with us, or we've sorted this, we just need a price?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And and so in your use of, well, that's an RFQ then.
Yeah.
That's not
Exactly.
a request. Okay. Because a proposal can't happen unless you've worked through all this stuff. That's how you're seeing it.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
think when you're doing an RFP, because it takes a lot. It always takes longer than you expect it to.
Yeah.
There's delays. People are on holiday and stuff like that. I think I haven't done that many because you only really do it when it's justifiable. But again, I
Yeah.
think first, if my advice to salespeople would be with RFPs, it depends on the person. It depends on the
Yeah.
person in procurement you speak to. Some of them will do it for absolutely everything. It's just stupid. Whereas you don't need it for everything. You need to
Yeah.
perform your due diligence and you need to make sure you're justifying it. If you haven't got to do a bloody, a full like 3-month process every time you want to buy something.
So the advice is check what you're being asked. Are
Yeah,
you column fodder? Are
basically.
you being asked to tuck a price in, and really it's going to take you a ton of effort where someone else has done all this, or actually no, they are looking for someone who is to prove themselves they need to work on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And my advice would be, well, getting even earlier, trigger the thinking at the higher level, who then says, hey guys, we all need to be on this. Procurement, can you line up with these guys because they're the ones who made me think about it, and that's who I want to go with.
Yeah, and some people would just be using it for benchmarking,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
all they'll be doing. But I think you can, as salespeople, I imagine you could probably spot that from a mile off. It
Mm.
depends
Well,
how
a bit
people
like our
word it.
happy ears, we have happy eyes. Oh, they want to buy from us. They want to buy from us. So we sink a load of time and
Yeah,
effort into it. But oh, mate, sort of time. You spent some time sharing a load of insight into procurement and then kind of how you think and things that salespeople can do to land better. And I think you said it a couple of times to not be a knob when they're talking to you. So look, thank you so much. Where can people get in touch with you? Where can they find out a little bit more?
so yeah, I'm on the old LinkedIn. Yeah, just look Tomlinson. My name pops up. There's a picture of me with a bright pink background.
There we
Um,
go.
and yeah, my eyes are quite squinty. It's not the best picture, but yeah, pink background, squinty eyes. That's me.
So this course for like personal branding for procurement people.
Yeah,
I'll sign you up for it, mate. The
sign me
way
up
you
for it.
sold
Yeah,
yourself there is superb. No, we will put your link to LinkedIn in the show notes so people can find you there because you do share a ton of stuff, which is why we're talking. So thank you so much for coming on. It really has been it's been illuminating.
my pleasure, Fred.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.